CBS Music.
Things gon' change when I really hit the field. Undefeated chance, man, you know what's the deal. Tryna find a kid, I'm in the field doing drills. Boy, you just a sucker, you ain't never keep it real. 3 rings in my hand, I'm a warrior to the max. When I hang it up, they gon' have to give me plaques. Step up in the building and I only bring the facts. When I make a highlight, they gon' replay, run it back. Okay, always locked in, I don't got time to lax. Saying he the best, he could take a lap. Batted 1,000 when you check the stats. Boy, is you ready? You ain't gotta ask.
Welcome to this very special episode of Just Winning. We are coming to you live once again from the Nicholson School of Communication studio. A lot's happened since the last show. It's been a very exciting week in sports. We've had the men's and women's NCAA basketball tournaments are in full swing. We've had the NBA trade deadline has come and gone. Some NFL trades shaking up the draft order. Plus UFC 260. We are going to get into all of that and more. First, let me introduce my very special guest, my good friend, Hannah Jo Groves. Hannah, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm really excited to talk football with you, learn your picks for the draft, and, discuss all that stuff.
Absolutely. It's great to have you on. And Hannah Jo is our in-house Denver Broncos expert. So, Hannah, I'm really curious to get your opinion as the Broncos are in a strange place right now. This time last year, there was a lot of hype surrounding Drew Lock. People were excited about the future with him. He looked like a very young, promising quarterback. Now, fast forward a year later, people are starting to write him off as a bust. Hannah Jo, what do you think? Should the Broncos keep building around Drew Lock, or is it time to move on, and are you ready to label him a bust?
Well, I definitely am a Broncos expert because I've been a fan my entire life because my mom is from Colorado. My mom's whole side of the family is from Colorado. And I gotta say, I am one of those fans that's pretty much done with Drew Lock. I hate to say it, he's still young. But after his injuries and his performance just hasn't been stellar to me. However, I will say, in the last few games of the season, he performed well, and that is what's been giving us hope. It's like, oh, well, maybe if he performs like he has in those games, we can, build around him. And I just don't know. I feel like it's the fool me once, shame on, you, fool me twice, shame on me, that type of deal. So I'm done with him. But, we got a new general manager, and he's already been shaking things up in the free agency realm, and so I'm excited. I'm hoping secretly, and we'll get into this in a little bit, that maybe one of those top 5 quarterbacks will fall to Denver, who has that number 9 pick. That, I'd love to see it. But, if it ends up being Drew Lock again, I'd be fine with that too. Hopefully he proves me wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Drew Lock, you got him some good weapons. You got Jerry Jeudy, you got Noah Fant. Maybe reboost that O-line. They brought back Von Miller on the defensive side. I think in the draft what they do is they go Micah Parsons, linebacker from Penn State. He's an absolute animal, real great football player, great sideline to sideline. I think he'd give their defense a huge boost. Give Drew Lock one more season. If he doesn't show it after this season, then it's time to turn the page and move on. As I mentioned earlier, we've seen the NFL draft order shake up a little bit. We've seen the 49ers trade up into the number 3 pick. The Dolphins trade back to the 6th, with the Eagles to trade back to the 12th. So, Hannah Jo, let's get into our new top 5, our updated mock drafts. Hannah, who do you have going number 1?
All right, well, I think our number 1 and our number 2 haven't changed much. I think we have similar picks here, but of course, I gotta go with Trevor Lawrence out of Clemson. He's obviously a great size. He's got a great arm. He's tough. He's a leader. I think he's going to be a great, hopefully, new reboot for this Jaguars team.
Yeah, Trevor Lawrence, he's kind of a no-brainer here. He's everything you want in an NFL quarterback. He's tall. He's big. He's got the strong arm. He's accurate. He makes pretty good decisions. Hannah Jo, this has probably been the most hyped NFL prospect I've seen since maybe Andrew Luck. Do you think he's going to live up to it?
I really think he can. I think he can. And, I told you about this before the show. Chris Sims has been critical of him, saying that he feels like Zach Wilson is actually better, that his film is cleaner. But I really think, even if Jacksonville is just in it for the hype that Trevor Lawrence brings, I think that's okay because I think Trevor Lawrence is a great leader. He showed us that last summer when he was really outspoken at the Black Lives Matter events, and he was really outspoken in the COVID-19 thing where they wanted to play. They wanted to, get their, they wanted to play, and that's, you know, it was hard for them, but he really stood out in that, and I think that that's what we need. We need a leader, and I think he will live up to that. I think with this coach, Urban Meyer, who's worked with leaders like Tim Tebow before, I think it's going to be a great matchup, and I think he'll do great.
Yeah, I agree. You know, I don't see a weakness with Trevor Lawrence. I think he's ready for it. You mentioned Zach Wilson. I have him going number 2 to the Jets. Do you as well, and why?
I do as well. It's actually funny. When I was doing my initial research for this, Justin Fields was actually my number 2 pick, but the more research I did, the further down it looked like other people were predicting that Justin Fields would go. So here we are. We have Zach Wilson out of Brigham Young University. And you know, it's interesting because the truth of the matter is BYU is just not playing the same caliber of schools that Justin Fields necessarily has out of Ohio State. So, you know, I'm not sure. It could be Zach Wilson. It just seems like at the moment, he's the second best guy. And here we go with the second pick. And, you know, they have Sam Darnold, and Zach Wilson and Sam Darnold can, you know, maybe work on a relationship, work on each other. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I agree. I think Zach Wilson is the direction the Jets choose to go right here. I don't know that I agree with the pick personally. If it's me, I think Justin Fields is the surefire second best quarterback in this draft class. They should go 1 and 2. That said, I see what people see in Zach Wilson. You know, he's really everything you want in a modern day NFL quarterback. He moves around well. He's fast. He's elusive. He can extend plays, and he can throw the ball. You know, he's got that baseball arm that you see with Russell Wilson and Patrick Mahomes, where he can throw it from different angles. You know, we saw at his pro day that clip that went viral where he, you know, hit the fadeaway to the other side of the field. So I certainly was impressed by that. So I think Zach Wilson is the direction the Jets go. I'm ready to label Sam Darnold as a bust. Many people aren't. You know, granted, I will say the Jets haven't given him much help. So I do hope to see Sam Darnold ball out elsewhere. Now, the number 3 pick. This is where it gets interesting. We saw the 49ers trade up. I feel certain the 49ers know who they're going with here, because I don't think you make that trade, you know, just off a whim saying, oh, we're going to trade it to the 3rd and then figure it out. I think they know who they want to go here. Some think it's Mac Jones. Some think it's Justin Fields. Hannah Jo, I see you have them going Trey Lance, and I'm very curious to know why.
Okay, yes. So this was a hard pick for me, as you can imagine, and I originally did have a Justin Fields, a Zach Wilson. I ended up going with Trey Lance because I feel like he will work great with Shanahan. They have similar, you know, offensive strategies. They're working. Trey Lance can run. Oh my gosh, he can run. If you look at his highlights, he is all over the field. He's making plays. He's pulling them out of nowhere. And I feel like that'd be really exciting to see. And I think Shanahan is good at working with those kinds of quarterbacks. I really feel like he'd fit in great. So that's why I picked Trey Lance.
That's interesting. You know, Trey Lance, he kind of reminds me of Dak Prescott when Dak Prescott was coming out of Mississippi State. You know, he's got the prototypical build. He's a great athlete. I just think Trey Lance isn't quite NFL ready. I think he's got a guy who's a little more of a project. And with the roster the 49ers have right now, I think they want a guy they can plug and play right now. It was reported that John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan are going to Alabama's pro day to watch Mac Jones instead of going to Justin Fields. That's why I'm going Mac Jones right here. I think, you know, we're hearing a lot of Matt Ryan comparisons with Mac Jones. And Matt Ryan, that's a guy that Kyle Shanahan has had a lot of success with for that year in Atlanta. So I think Shanahan, they go Mac Jones. And Mac Jones, he's one of the more controversial picks in this draft because a lot of people say, oh, he had everything handed to him at Alabama. He had a Heisman wide receiver. He had the best O-line in the country. He had the best coaching staff in the country. But that is all true. Guess what? In the NFL, like in college, you need a good team around you to succeed. That's true with every quarterback. Just because he had that doesn't make me want to write him off. He still does a lot of things well. He's a great decision maker. He moves through his progressions quickly. And he's one of the more accurate quarterbacks in this draft. I think he's that's the one area where he is better than Fields. I think he's more accurate than Fields, and I think the 49ers are going to go with Mac Jones with the number 3 pick.
Well, while we're talking about Mac Jones, can I ask you a question? I had this planned out here because I know you're a Mac Jones fan.
Oh, yeah.
So I've heard this quote before, and I wrote it down. Do you think that a fast mind is better than fast feet? Do you think that's what the 49ers need right now? And is that what Mac Jones brings?
Well, Hannah Jo, that is an excellent question. You bring up a good point because that is one of the knocks on Mac Jones, that, he doesn't have the athleticism of a Zach Wilson, of a Justin Fields, of a Trey Lance to extend the plays. However, he does have underrated athleticism. Go watch the film, and you see him escape sometimes. You see him elude defenders, and he can get the ball downfield. Does he do it on the same level as Zach Wilson, as Justin Fields, as Trey Lance? No, not quite, but I think he does it good enough, and I think the other things he does well, the fast mind you mentioned, will be enough. And that's not to say I think, Trey Lance has a ways to go with that. Justin Fields, he is underrated in that department, just like Mac Jones is underrated with the quick feet, where Justin Fields, I think he may very well be the smartest quarterback in this draft. Right. My issue with Justin Fields is he's been inaccurate. You see inaccuracies every time you turn on an Ohio State Justin Fields game, and that's a big issue to me. And to me, that is where Mac Jones really separates himself from Justin Fields.
Okay, I gotcha. I just feel like he's comfy in the pocket, and that's great. But, when you have someone like Trey Lance who can make something out of nothing no matter what, that just seems more appealing to me. But I get what you're saying. I think the NFL does see a lot of stock in him. I think they see his potential. So I definitely could see him going to the 49ers. You got to consider Jimmy Garoppolo, though. He's still there. So I don't know.
Jimmy Garoppolo is still there, and he's still a good QB.
Right.
Now, speaking of Justin Fields, I see you have him going number 4 to the Falcons. Are the Falcons ready to move on from Matt Ryan?
Okay, so you know this. I told you this last night. This was my hardest pick. And I don't necessarily want them to go to Justin Fields because, as I said earlier, I hope that somehow Justin Fields or someone like him falls to the Broncos at the number 9 spot. But I think that, if they're going to get Matt Ryan to play well, I think he needs some competition. And I think that Justin Fields can provide that. I think that if they're competing for a starting spot, that will give Matt Ryan the motivation he needs to really, get back to where he was when they were a Super Bowl team. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think absolutely. I think ultimately I don't want the Falcons to go quarterback. You see, I have them going Sewell. I think you add a couple more pieces to the Falcons, and they can compete right now. But Justin Fields, he's so talented. He falls to you at 4. If you like him that much, you take him. And it's going to be very interesting to see what happens. I think this is, this is a fact, the most talented quarterback draft class we've seen in years. So it'll be great to see how it shakes out. And we're going to continue to bring you draft coverage and make sure you turn into our live draft show April 29th. That's all the time we have for NFL Draft Talk. When we get back, we'll bring you the Beast, Bust, and Best of the Week.
Here's the story of a show creator who was gearing up to form a bigger crew.
One's a California guy,
a god of graphics.
One hosted Girls on Deck.
It's a story of a 4-year nightmare, which is finally coming to an end, thank God. And the new kid, a Packers lover.
Tampa forever.
So then one day all these people work together to face a year unlike one that's ever been.
And his group rebranded in Orlando. That's the way we all became HTFN. 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 That's the way we became HTFN. That's blasphemy!
Welcome back to the Beast, Bust, and Best of the Week. This is going to be one of the best Beast, Bust, and Best of the Week in a long time because, as I mentioned, this is probably the most exciting week in sports since football season ended. So, and plus we've got Hannah Jo on. This is the Hannah Jo Show now, and I'm excited to see what she brings to the table. So without further ado, Hannah Jo, who is your Beast of the Week?
Well, after last night's game, it became undeniable for me. 19-year-old Paige Buchers from UConn. She had 28 points in last night's game against Baylor, which had that controversial no call, which we can talk about if you'd like to. But she is just a force. The Huskies are currently undefeated in the NCAA tournament, and I think she's a huge part of that. She's 19 years old, a freshman. She's 5'11", and everybody just keeps talking about her. You can't get her name out of your mouth. She is amazing.
Yeah, she sure is. Paige Bucher, more like Paige Buckets. 28 points last night in a big win. You bring up the no call. That was sort of the big story waking up this morning. LeBron James tweeted about it in real time that it should have been a foul. Personally, I like the no call right here, okay? I felt like the defender went straight up, and if it's iffy, I don't want the game to be decided by a referee in the final second. So I really like the no call here.
I totally get that. I am right there with you. The problem I have is it wasn't like a huge game where, well, it was a huge game. It wasn't a game where there was a huge gap in points. So then a ref can decide it, and that stinks always. But I don't know much about basketball, but from what I saw, I mean, there were arms and faces, and, you know, you can argue that she was kind of shooting into that, whatever. It didn't look good to me. But you know what? I like Paige Buchers. I'm glad she won. I think she deserves to win. Her team deserves to win. So, you know, I won't talk much about it.
Yeah, and, you know, speaking of, you know, not looking so good, Stipe Miocic's face didn't look so good Saturday night. My beast of the week, I'm going Francis Ngannou, the new heavyweight champion of the UFC. This guy is an absolute beast. Like, he is a literal beast, okay? And he's got a great backstory. You know, he's originally from Cameroon, Africa. He got caught trying to get out of Cameroon 7 times, was locked up, incarcerated in France for 2 months, gets out, is homeless, training to be a fighter, and now he's the heavyweight champion of the UFC. The guy's an absolute monster, and I think he's the best pure athlete I've seen in the UFC since John Jones, which there's a good chance we're going to get to see those two go head-to-head in the near future. So I'm super excited about Francis Ngannou in the UFC.
That sounds awesome. I cannot believe he tried to escape 7 times, you said?
7 times from Africa. Got caught 7 times, but you know what? He didn't give up. He made it over that 8th time.
Dang,
so
that's crazy.
One of the most amazing stories. I sure hope we get to see a 30 for 30 about him in the near future. Hannah Jo, I'm curious, who is your bust of the week?
So unfortunately, I have a hometown bust for us, and that is the Orlando Magic. The trade deadline just passed. Aaron Gordon's gone, Evan Fournier is gone, and now Vooch is gone. It's just great. And it's interesting because I was reading the Orlando Sentinel article about this, and the opinions on it are very different. People who don't live here are like, oh, this is great. This will, you know, grow the team, or we're giving young players new opportunities. And people from here are really dismayed about it, and I gotta say I agree with them. You know, they're saying stuff like, we were 1 player away from really getting back into the game, and now we're like 5 players away. Some tweets were comparing the reconstruction of the Magic to reconstruction of I-4 and arguing which will be done next or first. So yeah, I'm curious, you're a Magic fan, right? What do you think about all this?
Oh yeah, I'm a huge lifelong Magic fan, and you know what, Hannah Jo, there's an old saying, it's one man's bust is another man's best.
Oh.
Yes, that's how the saying goes. And I really like what the Magic did, okay? Because, yes, we've been plagued by injuries this year. You know, Markelle Fultz has been out, Isaac's been out. But with this core with Vucevic, Fournier, and Aaron Gordon, they still couldn't win games keeping them together. So it's like, what's the point of keeping this intact? We can ship them out, get some young guys in there, stockpile some draft picks, and, you know, it may feel like we're starting from scratch, but guess what? That team had reached its ceiling when it was the 7th, 8th best team in the East. And, you know, now without Isaac and Fultz, they're not even a playoff team. So if that's your ceiling, you know what? It's time to blow it up. And I'll tell you, watching that Lakers game the other night, I found it much more exciting and intriguing to watch us, you know, develop these young guys and see which guys are stepping up, which guys are going to be the future of the organization. I found that way more exciting than watching a peaked Vucevic, Aaron Gordon, and Evan Fournier. So I actually really like what the Magic are doing right now.
All right, well, I'm glad to hear that you have a positive outlook on it. That gives me some hope, but I just was really sad to hear that Vooch was gone.
Yeah, I will certainly miss him, but you know what, Hannah Jo, let me tell you something I do not have such a positive outlook on, and that is the NFL owners' vote to expand the regular season schedule. It's expected to get passed this week. The NFL regular season is going to be 17 games, and I don't like this right here, and I'll tell you why. First of all, I feel like the NFL is going to oversaturate the market. I felt this way since they moved to adding Thursday night football. You know what? One of the things that's so great about the NFL is they keep you wanting more. All year you wait for the season to come, and then you blink your eyes and the season's over and it's Super Bowl Sunday. You know, all week long during the season you wait for Sunday to come and you watch all the games. You get Monday night football, you get Thursday night football, but all week you're just waiting for more football. The more the NFL expands, the more games they add, the more games during the week they add, the less they're going to do that, and that's my fear. They're going to oversaturate the market. That's my fan perspective on it. From a player's perspective, you know, teams are already having such heavy injury issues, okay? It seems like by the time we get to the playoffs, it's whichever team is most healthy wins it. You add another week to the schedule, it's only going to become more of an issue. You know, the players are just going to have another week to get banged up, get injured. If anything, we should be dialing it back. It's all, especially, you know, as the NFL is trying to move more towards player safety. So the NFL, the owners, these are the only people this is benefiting. It's just putting more money in the greedy owner's pocket. So the NFL, you are my bust of the week.
Man, it's really hard to say that more football is a bad thing, but I gotta say,
once again, one man's bust is another man's best.
Well, right, exactly, and I think you're right. I think we gotta consider the players' safety, their health, and you're right. You know, those guys that get the bye week usually are the ones that feel great, and then they usually win, in my experience anyway. So I feel like you're right about that. It's hard though, because I love to watch football every day of the week in the fall. So, you know, I gotcha.
Yeah, that's true. And there is another fan perspective that, hey, we get another week of football. It's
Right.
great. But, you know, as we keep expanding, we might be losing quality as well. So
True.
ultimately, you know, I think this is a very bad thing for the NFL. It's a bad move. So NFL, you're my bust of the week. Now on to a more positive note. Hannah Jo, who is your best of the week?
So I am not a frequent March Madness watcher, but I gotta say it's hard to ignore Gonzaga right now. They are undefeated in March Madness. They are absolutely dominating. They've got Jalen Suggs, Drew Timme, a bunch of other players. It's actually funny, kind of going off track here, but I was listening to a podcast that said that even though that Suggs and Timme are, you know, in the venue in Indiana, the most famous person around is still Sister Jean. Anyway, so they're just, you know, dominant. It doesn't look like to me that there's any stopping them. I've read some excuses of, well, you know, Gonzaga, they don't do well other than March Madness, or they only do well before March Madness. And, you know, you can't say that now. They're absolutely proving everyone wrong that said they wouldn't do well this season. So, I mean, who's going to stop them? Do you think anyone can?
Do I think anyone can, or do I think anyone will? I'll tell you this. I think Gonzaga is a great best because they've been the most dominant team this season. And as far as March Madness, I think they're putting on the best offensive performance of anyone for sure. And I really think that, you know, Gonzaga is a tough team to evaluate because in the regular season, they don't really play anyone good. They don't play anybody who has much of a chance to beat them. And then we get to March Madness, and in previous years, they've sure disappointed a lot. But I think it's been said many times that Gonzaga has a much better chance this year because the Dukes aren't in there, the Kentuckys aren't in there, Kansas isn't what they've been in previous years. And if there's ever a year for Gonzaga, it's certainly this one. I think what really separates this Gonzaga team from other ones is the NBA talent that is on this team. We haven't seen Gonzaga loaded with NBA draft prospects like they are this year, as you mentioned, with Jalen Suggs. So I think Gonzaga, certainly they'll punch their ticket to the Final Four tonight, and then it remains to be seen. So I think that's absolutely a great best of the week.
Awesome. What's your best? Tell us.
My best of the week is the first team to punch their ticket to the Final Four, the Houston Cougars. Okay? With everything bad that's going on with Houston, with the Houston Rockets getting rid of James Harden, they're tanking. The Houston Texans, they're losing Deshaun Watson. And really, things couldn't be going worse for the Texans organization. I don't think there's a worse organization in the NFL to be supporting right now. But the Houston Cougars, they are the bright spot for the city of Houston. They're not getting enough love right now. They've been the best defensive team in the tournament. They're absolutely dominating everyone they play. It's bringing back the old Phi Slamma Jamma days when they had Clyde Drexler. So I'm really excited to see this Houston team in the Final Four. And they can go toe-to-toe with anybody. They are as good as Baylor. They are as good as Gonzaga. And they belong where they are right now.
Wow, all right. I hope they can give Gonzaga a fight. That'd be really interesting to see.
Yeah, I think that'll be an amazing matchup if we get to see it, because with Gonzaga versus Houston, you've essentially got the best offensive team in college basketball versus the best defensive team in college basketball. And there's an old saying, defense wins championships. Hannah Jo, do you think that'll be the case?
You know, I do. Because I like that saying. I like that perspective, because, you know, you get all the glamour when you're making the buckets and all that, but I like that at the end of the day, the hard work of the defense is really what wins it for you. So just because I like that concept, I'm going to say I think that's true.
Awesome. So we've got Houston over Gonzaga, representing the American Athletic Conference tournament well, since UCF was not able to make the tournament this year. Hopefully we'll be back next year. Hannah Jo, we got two more teams punching their tickets to the Final Four tonight. We've got USC versus Gonzaga. Who are you taking real quick?
Gonzaga, absolutely. I mean, they're my best. I got to go with them. I'm betting on myself here.
You got to take your best. I think I'm taking Gonzaga as well, but I think it'll be closer than the experts think. USC really matches up well with Gonzaga right here. UCLA, Michigan, who do you have?
Michigan, again, I just feel like there's a big gap in those rankings there, and I think that Michigan's just going to take it. I mean, maybe it could be close if, you know, it could be, but I think that Michigan's going to dominate.
I'm going UCLA. It'll be great to watch. Can't wait to check out those games tonight. Hannah Jo, thank you for joining me today. It's been an awesome time. To our viewers, thank you for tuning in. Be sure to like and subscribe and tune in next week. Everybody have a great week.
Things gon' change when I really hit the field. Undefeated champs, man, you know what's the deal. Tryna find a kid, I'm in the field doing drills. Boy, you just a sucker, you ain't never keep it real. 3 rings in my hand, I'm a warrior to the max. When I hang it up, they gon' have to give me plaques. Step up in the building and I only bring the facts. When I make a